My parents charged $133,000 to my brother's credit card for my Europe tour without his permission. But when I came home, Caleb had quietly prepared a response that left them speechless. My name's Madison. I'm 23, female. And if I had to sum up my role in the family, it's this, the favored one. You know, the one who gets the opportunities and advantages. But what happened recently? This was on another level. Let me back up a bit. I've got an older brother, Caleb, who's 29 and works in finance. He's smart, driven, and honestly, I've always been proud of him. We don't have the closest sibling relationship, but I know he loves me. For example, for my graduation, he got me this laptop I'd been hinting at for months. It wasn't cheap, and I knew he did that out of love. I loved it, and I felt like I was spoiled by my older brother. Growing up, our parents had a unique approach to raising us, and by unique, I mean wildly inconsistent. Caleb was always the responsible one, the dependable child who worked hard and built a life on his own terms. By the time he was 23, he was already financially independent, working in finance, and proud of the career he'd carved out for himself. I, on the other hand, have always been the baby of the family, pampered and adored. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother, but it was clear from the start that I was the favorite. I never had to work a part-time job or pitch in around the house. I always had the latest gadgets, the trendiest clothes, and the best of everything. Meanwhile, Caleb focused on his own goals and tried not to bother with my parents' favoritism. Still, there were moments when he was hurt. A few days after my graduation, my mom called Caleb. Now, my mom is, well, she's a character. She's not mean exactly, but she's the type of person who thinks she's always right and doesn't see a problem with steamrolling over everyone else's boundaries. If she wants something, she'll justify it in her head, no matter how ridiculous it might be. So, she calls and right away she's in full-on excitement mode. "Caleb, you're not going to believe what we've done for Madison's graduation," she said, her voice practically vibrating with enthusiasm. I could hear Caleb chuckled a little. "What's the big surprise?" he asked, expecting her to say they got me a nice piece of jewelry or maybe threw me a party. "Well," she began, dragging out the word, "we booked her a month-long trip to Europe. Isn't that amazing?" I was genuinely surprised by their extravagant gift. "Wow, that's a huge gift," Caleb said. "I didn't know you guys were planning something like that." "Oh, it's going to be incredible," she said, clearly patting herself on the back. "First-class flights, 5-star hotels, private tours, nothing but the best for our girl." At this point, I was impressed. I mean, my parents aren't exactly wealthy. They've always been comfortable enough, but a trip like that, it sounded like something they'd been saving for a long time. Then my mom added, "And of course, we used your credit card to book it all." I then heard Caleb froze. "Wait, my credit card?" "Yes," she said, her tone completely casual, like she just told him she borrowed a cup of sugar. "Mom," he said, "why would you use my card without asking me first?" "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she said, brushing him off like he was overreacting. "We needed the points for upgrades, and we know you're doing well financially. You can handle it." At this point, I can only imagine Caleb's heart was racing. "How much are we even talking about here?" She hesitated for maybe half a second before saying, "It's about $133,000. I was shocked. $133,000? Caleb said, his voice rising. "Yes, Caleb," she said, sounding annoyed now. "It's for your sister's graduation. It's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. You should be happy for her." "Mom," he said, trying to rein in his growing anger. $133,000? Without even a phone call? This can't be happening. I remember the words catching in my throat, a bitter knot forming in my stomach. "Oh, give it a rest. You're being so dramatic," my mother retorted, her voice sharp and dismissive. "We will get the money back to you. Don't you worry. You think this is nothing? You took my credit card without asking. That is illegal." I was in disbelief. "Are you kidding me? You maxed out my card without a word. How could you?" "Honestly, you are being so dramatic," she repeated. "We are family, so we help each other out when we can. You're always so cold, you know that? Can't you just be nice for once without causing a scene? Her words felt like a punch to the gut. Cold? I said, my voice rising in disbelief. I'm the cold one? I got Madison that new laptop for college, Mom, you know that, right? That was my graduation gift to her. I gave her that as a special present. This trip is not my responsibility. Oh, don't be difficult, she shot back, her voice laced with exasperation. The laptop was not even that good. This is her graduation, and it is very important. Don't you want your sister to have something to remember it by? Of course I do, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But why does that mean I have to pay for a lavish trip I didn't even know about, let alone agree to? My mom sighed, a long, dramatic sigh that suggested I was the one being unreasonable. We'll pay you back, okay? You have a stable job, don't you? So what is the problem? The problem, I said, each word dripping with controlled fury, is that you spent $133,000 on my card without my consent. That's not a small error or misunderstanding. That is insane. You could have asked me for permission before you did that. At least. Well, if we had asked, you would have automatically said no, she said, as if that justified everything. Exactly, I said, my voice rising. Because it's my money, not yours. You're so difficult, she snapped. We sacrificed so much to raise you, Caleb. The least you can do is support your sister. I don't see why you have to be so stingy. At that point, I knew I couldn't argue anymore. My anger was a tangible thing, a burning knot in my chest. We'll have to continue this later, I managed to say, my voice shaking. Oh, whatever, she said dismissively. But we're leaving soon, and I don't know when we will talk again. I hung up, my hand trembling. I needed a moment to absorb the extent of what had just occurred. I opened my credit card account, and there it was, spread across the screen. Flights, hotels, fancy dinners, tours, $133,000. Gone. My mind raced, trying to piece together how Madison and my parents had even gotten my card in the first place. I recalled a few weeks prior when Madison needed to pay for something for school. My parents guaranteed that she would pay me back as soon as possible, so I agreed to give her my credit card to make the payment. I didn't think of it twice then. She was my sister, and she had always returned my things before. What I didn't realize was that she decided to keep it for her own purposes. And it was obvious she decided to keep it for her own use. Now, I can't stop thinking about how casually they did this, without a second thought. How they assumed that I would just be quiet and be okay with it. How they acted like I was the one causing problems. I can't let this pass. Something needs to change, and I'm going to ensure it does. I can't believe I'm writing this again, so soon. Things have spiraled beyond anything I could have imagined. I'm sitting here, fingers flying across the keyboard, still reeling from the sheer absurdity my life has become. After that initial, unsettling call from Mom, I was trapped in this bizarre space between disbelief and fury. A small, naive part of me wanted to believe maybe Madison was as oblivious as I was. Maybe she doesn't even know the trip was charged to my card, I reasoned. Mom's always been the puppet master in our family, and Madison has always floated through life, blissfully unburdened by financial concerns. I wanted to extend her some grace, some benefit of the doubt. Then I made the mistake of checking her Instagram. My blood ran cold the second her posts loaded. She wasn't just on the trip. She was absolutely reveling in it. Those scenic views, the plush hotel rooms, the artistically arranged meals. They weren't abstract concepts anymore. They were her reality. Madison, along with Mom and Dad, had already jetted off, indulging in their lavish European adventure, completely carefree, all financed by my hard-earned money. The audacity of it all churned my stomach. They hadn't even bothered to address the situation with me directly. No apologies, no explanations, just a complete dismissal of my feelings and concerns. They acted as though it was their inherent right to spend my money, like I was merely an ATM, existing solely to fund their whims. And then, Madison had the nerve to text me. At first glance, it seemed innocent enough. She sent a barrage of photos. Breathtaking vistas, opulent hotel suites, gourmet food presented like works of art. With each image, my jaw tightened a little more. She wasn't just enjoying herself. She was flaunting the life she was living on my dollar, without my consent. It wasn't merely thoughtless. It was profoundly disrespectful. Then came the final, crushing blow. Madison sent one last picture, a close-up of her designer suitcase. Ostentatiously displayed on the handle was a luggage tag crafted from my credit card. The caption read, "Carrying your contribution with me everywhere." I stared at the photo, my hands trembling with a rage that threatened to consume me. It was a deliberate slap in the face. She had transformed my money, stolen without a shred of remorse, into some kind of twisted trophy. It wasn't enough that they had betrayed my trust. They had to flaunt their transgression. This wasn't mere carelessness. This was pure, unadulterated entitlement, and I was finally finished being their doormat. I stared at the image, trying to wrap my head around the sheer insanity of it. Was this some kind of sick joke? I mean, who does that? Who turns a credit card they know they weren't authorized to use into a souvenir? I fired back a text immediately. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Madison responded with a laughing emoji. Relax. It's funny. You've been working so hard. I figured you'd want to be part of the trip in some way. Part of the trip? I responded, incredulous, as if I wasn't already bankrolling the entire damn thing. I laid it out for her, plain and simple. Madison, this isn't funny. Do you even realize how much this trip cost me? $133,000. That's years of relentless work, careful savings, and meticulous financial planning, all gone. In one fell swoop. Her response was infuriatingly flippant. OMG, you're so dramatic. Mom said she'd pay you back. Why are you acting like this is a big deal? You're doing fine financially, right? I felt completely detached from reality. It was like trying to communicate with someone from another planet. I tried, again, to explain that it wasn't just about the money. It was about the fact that they had done this completely behind my back, maxed out my credit card, and left me to deal with a massive financial fallout. Her reply? Well, maybe if you weren't so uptight, you'd understand how much this trip means to me. You should be happy for me. Just stop being such a buzzkill, Madison chirped. And that's when I knew logic wasn't going to work with her. She was cheerfully clueless about the magnitude of the problem. Mom, meanwhile, was conveniently sidestepping any accountability. I felt this overwhelming pressure to act, to get a grip on my finances before they completely disintegrated. My first instinct was to call the credit card company and dispute the charges. Naively, I assumed it would be a simple process. I hadn't authorized any of this. Shouldn't that be enough? I now know that this decision would open up a whole can of worms. When I finally got through to someone at the credit card company, I tried my best to remain calm as I explained the situation. My parents had taken it upon themselves to use my card to pay for my sister's lavish European getaway. I didn't mince words. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It was a blatant misuse of my financial information. The representative initially sounded sympathetic. "Oh, I'm so sorry this happened," she said, her voice filled with fake concern. "Let me pull up the charges and see what we can do." Hope flickered. Maybe this could be resolved easily. But after a few minutes of silence punctuated by keyboard clicks, she returned with an answer I wasn't prepared for. "Okay, I've reviewed the account," she stated carefully. "And while I understand your frustration, these charges don't technically qualify as fraud." "Excuse me?" I practically choked on the words. "How can this not be fraud? I didn't authorize any of these purchases." She responded in that carefully practiced corporate tone. "Well, it appears the card information was used by someone you willingly shared it with. According to our policy, that doesn't meet the criteria for fraud." The frustrating thing is that my parents did have my card information. Years ago, I'd given it to them for emergencies, unexpected bills or urgent medical expenses. I trusted them implicitly. The thought that they would ever abuse that trust simply never crossed my mind. It was starting to dawn on me that Madison using the physical card was just the tip of the iceberg. My parents had felt perfectly entitled to use my card information for booking flights, upgrading hotels, the whole shebang. It wasn't a single impulsive mistake. It was a calculated betrayal by the people I loved most. So, let me get this straight, I asked, fighting to keep the anger from my voice. Because I gave my parents my card information years ago, they're allowed to max it out without asking, and there's nothing you can do about it? A slight hesitation hung in the air before she spoke. Unfortunately, since you shared the information willingly, we can't classify the charges as unauthorized. Have you spoken with your parents about reimbursing you? Of course I'd spoken with them. They act like it's no big deal, like I'm being unreasonable. That's why I was calling them. Because I needed help getting this resolved. I understand your frustration, she said, her voice annoyingly even and professional. If you'd like, I can transfer you to our billing department to discuss a payment plan for the outstanding balance. A payment plan for $133,000 that I never even spent? I felt like I'd stumbled into some bizarre, Kafkaesque nightmare. No, I said, struggling to maintain composure. I am not interested in a payment plan. I'm interested in getting these charges reversed. I'm really sorry, she said, the words dripping with insincerity. But under the circumstances, there's nothing more we can do on our end. If you'd like, I can file a report to document the situation, but it won't change the status of the charges. I ended the call feeling completely and utterly defeated. I thought contacting the credit card company would at least give me some leverage, some way to start digging myself out of this hole, but instead, I was left with a maxed-out card and seemingly no recourse. I feel so lost right now. The foundation of trust within my family has completely crumbled, and I honestly don't know what to do next. I'm desperately seeking some guidance. What would you do in this situation? I promise to update when I have something new to share, some direction to move in. Okay, here's the next installment of this never-ending saga. For those just joining, my parents decided to use my credit card, without so much as a buy your leave, to finance my sister Madison's $133,000 European graduation extravaganza. When I bravely attempted to dispute the charges with the credit card company, they basically shrugged and said it wasn't fraud because I'd previously shared my card information with my parents. So that avenue slammed shut with the force of a steel door. After I hung up, I felt trapped, like every attempt to fix this situation was just leading me to a dead end. But then, while I was sifting through your comments, it hit me. Just because the credit card company couldn't help didn't mean I was completely out of options. If the charges were made without my consent, the businesses my parents used to make these plans, the airlines, hotels, etc., those companies also didn't have my consent. Okay, here it goes. That's when the clarity hit me, a sharp, focused beam cutting through the fog of disbelief and hurt. I couldn't wade through the endless bureaucracy of the credit card company. Not if I wanted to act fast. The only path forward was direct. The airlines, the hotels, the tour companies themselves. If I could present a convincing case that these purchases were fraudulent, maybe, just maybe, I could throw a wrench into this whole ludicrous escapade. I started with the airline. Madison, bless her social media-obsessed soul, had plastered her Instagram with pre-departure selfies at the airport, each one helpfully tagging the airline and flaunting her first-class seat number. Gritting my teeth, I found their customer service number online and dialed. "Hi," I managed, striving for a calm, professional tone that belied the turmoil raging inside me. "I need to report an issue with a ticket purchased with my credit card." The representative, bless her heart, simply asked for details. I recited the flight number, the date, and Madison's full name, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. "The issue," I explained, trying not to let my voice shake, "is that this ticket was booked without my explicit authorization. While the cardholder details match my information, I never approved this purchase." A brief pause crackled on the other end while she accessed the reservation. "Okay, I see the booking here," she finally said. "Can you confirm that this charge was made fraudulently?" "Technically, yes," I hedged, choosing my words carefully. "It was made by a family member who used my card without my consent." "I understand," she replied, her tone carefully neutral. "Unfortunately, because the ticket has already been issued and the outbound flight has been taken, we can't cancel the reservation entirely. However, I can place a hold on the return ticket pending further investigation. Yes, that's perfect, I exclaimed, a little too enthusiastically. She explained that the hold would prevent Madison from checking in for her return flight until this payment issue was resolved. She also flagged the reservation in their system, meaning any attempt at changes or upgrades would likely trigger extra scrutiny. Small victories, but I'd take them. Next up, the hotels. Madison, ever the show-off, had been religiously tagging every luxurious property she graced, which, irritatingly, made my task surprisingly easy. I started with the most recent one, a 5-star resort she'd gushed over in her Instagram stories. I'm calling regarding a reservation booked with my credit card, I began, launching into my now-rehearsed spiel. I need to confirm some details. The receptionist asked for the reservation number, which, predictably, Madison had posted alongside a photo of her room key. I recited the number. Once they had the reservation pulled up, I launched into my practiced explanation. My card had been used without my permission, and I needed to prevent any further charges. I understand, the receptionist responded smoothly. I can suspend incidentals for this room, which means the guest won't be able to charge anything further to their stay. Would you like us to also disable room service and minibar access? A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at my lips. Yes, please, I said, trying to remain calm and collected. After dealing with that hotel, I moved on to the next and then the next, following Madison's trail of tagged locations like breadcrumbs. Every call took time and emotional energy, but the outcome was consistently satisfying. Incidentals disabled, services suspended, reservations flagged for potential payment issues. Then came the tours. Madison had been documenting these absurd, once-in-a-lifetime experiences non-stop. Private yacht charters, exclusive vineyard tours, hot air balloon rides over Tuscan landscapes, the whole shebang. Most were with smaller, boutique operators who had direct booking lines. I called one of the yacht companies, identifying myself as the actual cardholder who'd paid for the reservation. There's been a mistake, I declared, my voice firm and resolute. I never authorized this charge, and I need to cancel the booking immediately. The person on the other end hesitated. I see the reservation here, but it's for tomorrow. Are you certain you want to cancel? We won't be able to issue a refund at this late stage. That's perfectly fine, I stated coolly. Cancel it regardless. They hesitantly agreed, and within minutes, Madison's luxurious yacht experience was canceled. By the time I was finished, I had successfully disrupted almost every major aspect of her ridiculous trip. The return flight was on hold, hotel services were restricted, and several extravagant tours were outright canceled. I wasn't trying to destroy her vacation completely, even though part of me wanted to. I just wanted her and my parents to experience some of the consequences of their actions. It's not a perfect solution, and it doesn't erase the hurt, but for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I was reclaiming some control. I know they're going to be furious when they find out, and they still have absolutely no idea what awaits them when they return. I planned a little surprise for them. Let's just say it's going to be memorable. That's all for now. I'll keep you updated. Update 3 coming soon. Okay, buckle up, because the fallout from all this has been intense. Last time, I neglected to mention I'd completely blocked the credit card. My thinking was, if they were so set on treating my money like their personal piggy bank, the least I could do was throw a wrench in their little spending spree. I honestly hadn't fully grasped the speed with which their precious European vacation would unravel. As the notifications of declined charges flooded my phone, a genuine sense of satisfaction washed over me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't simply a doormat being walked all over. Madison, it turned out, was using that card for absolutely everything. Hotel incidentals, guided tours, train tickets, even grabbing a sandwich. The instant the tap was turned off, her entire trip came to a screeching halt. So when her call came, a shriek. Really? I confess, a grin spread across my face. Caleb, what the hell is going on? The hotel won't accept my card, and I can't check in anywhere. I'm completely stranded. I kept my voice level, though. It's not your card, Madison, it's mine. and I froze it because it was being used without my explicit consent. She let out this theatrical groan of pure frustration. Are you kidding me? What am I supposed to do now? I can't even buy a coffee. Well, I said, trying not to sound too smug. Perhaps you should have considered that before you and Mom and Dad decided to finance this extravagant trip on my credit card without so much as a buy your leave. Predictably, she launched into a tirade about how selfish I was being, how I was single-handedly ruining her once-in-a-lifetime adventure. I told her flatly that this wasn't a conversation I was willing to have on the phone, and hung up. Next came Mom, and when I say she was angry, I mean she was practically vibrating with rage through the speaker. Caleb, what on earth is wrong with you? She screamed. You've left your sister helpless in a foreign country. Do you even care about what you've put her through? I almost laughed out loud. What I've done, Mom? You're the one who maxed out my credit card and saddled me with $133,000 in debt. This isn't my fault, and don't you dare try to flip this around on me. She retorted with, You're her brother. You're supposed to support her, not deliberately sabotage her. I wasn't about to fall for her guilt trip. You created this mess, not me. If Madison stuck, that's on you. You should have thought about the potential consequences before deciding to steal from me. Then came the waterworks and the accusations that I was tearing the family apart. I hung up before she could launch into a full-blown dramatic monologue. I naively assumed that would be the end of it for the day, but a few hours later, Dad called. Unlike Mom and Madison, he wasn't yelling. He was using that calm, disappointed dad voice, which honestly gets under my skin even more. Caleb, we need to discuss what you've done, he said, all reasonable and measured. Funny? I replied. That's precisely what I've been trying to tell you all along. This isn't the appropriate way to handle this situation, he said, conveniently ignoring my comment. You've stranded your sister in Europe. Do you have any idea the amount of hardship you've caused her? And do you have any idea the amount of financial hardship you caused me when you maxed out my credit card? I shot back, my voice rising despite my best efforts. He let out this exaggerated sigh, as if he was dealing with a particularly recalcitrant toddler. Listen, I understand that you're upset, but this is family. You could have discussed this with us instead of escalating things to this extreme. I did talk to you, I said, my frustration finally boiling over. I told you that this wasn't okay, and you dismissed me. What did you expect me to do? Just roll over and let you completely ruin my financial stability? Caleb, he said, still maintaining that infuriatingly calm tone. You've made your point. Can you at least unfreeze the account so that we can get Madison home? Without even a flicker of hesitation, I said, No, figure it out yourselves. After that, I stopped answering their calls altogether. I figured they'd eventually find some way to resolve things, and I absolutely refused to be their emergency fund or their backup plan. Over the following days, snippets of information about the ongoing chaos reached me through extended family members and mutual acquaintances. It's safe to say the drama is far from over. Turned out Madison hadn't even made it past the hotel lobby. She'd gone to ask about room service, only to be told they wouldn't let her charge anything to the room. They wanted the whole bill paid up front, and when her credit card failed, they canceled the entire reservation. I pictured her dragging that enormous suitcase of hers to some budget hostel miles away, the kind I could barely afford even splitting the cost with my parents years ago. I later found out my mom was completely incandescent with rage, blaming everyone but herself, of course. Apparently, she spent hours on the phone with relatives back home, practically begging for money to save Madison's precious vacation. A few distant cousins and aunts coughed up just enough to keep them afloat, but all the lavish plans Madison had been gloating about, the private yacht, the fancy restaurants, the vineyard tours, were immediately scrapped. What must have been absolutely mortifying for her, though, was that her return flight was flagged because of those payment issues I'd initiated. She couldn't even confirm her seat until it was all sorted out. I heard she tried to charm her way out of it with the airline staff, but they weren't having any of it. They told her she needed the cardholder, that's me, to call and resolve it. Apparently, Madison burst into tears at the counter, and Mom went into full-blown meltdown mode, screaming at the staff to fix it. Needless to say, it didn't work. Eventually, my parents scraped together enough for a cheap, one-way ticket home for her. The whole debacle delayed their return by days, and from what I gathered, it was a complete and utter nightmare. While all that chaos was unfolding overseas, I was at home filing a formal fraud report with the police. I had already given the credit card company all the information they needed, and they were investigating, but I wanted to make sure there were real consequences for what they had done, especially since they hadn't shown an ounce of remorse. The police took the case seriously. I handed over copies of text messages, screenshots of Madison's boastful social media posts, and detailed invoices from all the travel bookings. The detective I spoke with told me that when my family returned, they would likely be called in for questioning. Now, I'm just waiting to see how they react when they finally get back. One thing is absolutely certain. I'm finished with letting them take advantage of me. I'll keep you posted. Final update. Okay. Everyone, the update you've all been waiting for is here. And honestly, you won't believe it. When my parents and Madison finally staggered back from their disastrous vacation, they definitely didn't get the welcome they were expecting. Instead, they were met at the airport by the police. As I mentioned before, I had filed that fraud report while they were still gallivanting around on my dime. It wasn't a decision I took lightly, but after everything they had done, I knew I had to do something. The investigation took some time, but by the time their plane touched down, law enforcement was ready to have a little chat with them. A friend of mine, who I asked to go to the airport and observe the situation, said the whole scene was complete pandemonium. The police were waiting right at the gate, and as soon as my family emerged from customs, they were intercepted and pulled aside for questioning. Predictably, Madison immediately dissolved into tears, loudly proclaiming that she was the victim of her vindictive sibling. My mom, predictably, went straight into attack mode, arguing with the officers and insisting it was all some kind of misunderstanding. She even tried to pull the family card, saying that family issues shouldn't involve the police, as if that would magically erase the fraud they had committed. It didn't work, of course. The police had all the evidence they needed. The screenshots of those incriminating texts, Madison's gloating Instagram posts, and the flagged charges on my credit card. They explained that this wasn't just a family spat. It was fraud, plain and simple. My parents were furious, claiming they were being unfairly targeted. But the officers calmly told them they needed to come in for a formal statement. My dad, in his usual fashion, tried to be the calm, rational one. He apparently told the officers that I was overreacting and that this was just a family misunderstanding that had been blown out of proportion. The police weren't buying it. They let them go home, but informed them they'd be contacted soon for further questioning. After hearing all of this, I fully expected them to lie low for a while, maybe even consider taking some responsibility for their actions. But no. Instead, they showed up at my house the very next day demanding that I apologize. It started with them banging on my front door loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. I opened the door and there they were. My mom, absolutely livid, waving that invoice I'd sent them around. My dad, looking all stern and self-righteous. And Madison, glaring at me like I was the most evil person on the planet. Before I could even get a word out, my mom stormed inside, followed by the other two. "What is this?" she yelled, shoving the invoice in my face. "Are you actually serious?" My voice, though quiet, felt like a steel rod. "That's a concise breakdown of what you spent on my card." The audacity. I figured it was only fair you'd see the scale of the damage. "You are something else?" she spat out, her face twisting with anger. "You humiliated us, ruined Madison's precious trip, and now you're trying to make yourself the victim? We deserve an apology." I just stared, numbly taking in the situation. An apology? For protecting myself? There had to be a better way to handle this, dear, my father added, his voice infuriatingly calm as always. "You could have just spoken with us, instead of going to the police." My frustration finally erupted. "I did try talking to you. You just dismissed me. You said I was being selfish, dramatic. So yes, I escalated things, because clearly talking to you wasn't working. Madison predictably chimed in next. It wasn't just the trip, Caleb. I was so humiliated. Do you have any idea what it was like to have my reservations canceled and be treated like a criminal at those hotels? I let out a bitter laugh, though the humor of it all was bleak. Humiliated? Try having your family betray your trust. Try being stuck with a $133,000 bill because they decided my money was theirs to spend. Stop acting so melodramatic, my mother said, her voice now shaking with anger. We already said we were going to pay you back. How? When? I asked, honestly curious. If you had the money to pay me back, you wouldn't have needed my card in the first place. We're your family, Caleb, she yelled. Family helps each other. That's just what we do. No, I said firmly, finally standing up. I felt stronger than I had in a long time. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't put each other in impossible situations and then act like they're the ones who were wronged when they're called out. What you did wasn't help, it was betrayal, and now you're demanding an apology from me. Unbelievable. The room fell silent. They hadn't expected me to push back this hard. But I wasn't done. I am done with you people. I'm done always being the responsible one who has to clean up all of your messes while you just walk all over me. You've shown me exactly how little you respect me, and I'm not putting up with it anymore. My mother started to protest, but I cut her off. This isn't a negotiation. We're done. I don't owe you anything, not an apology, not forgiveness, nothing. It's time for you to leave my house now. My dad muttered something about how I was ruining the family. Madison rolled her eyes, turned on her heel, and slammed the door behind her. My mom was the last to leave, muttering under her breath about how ungrateful I was. When the door finally closed, I was hit by a wave of relief. For the first time, I didn't feel sad or guilty for standing up for myself. I felt like I could finally breathe. So, how did I get my money back? It wasn't easy. After freezing the card and flagging all the charges, the credit card company launched an investigation. Weeks of back and forth followed, and at first, they tried to argue that it wasn't fraud because I'd willingly shared my card information with my parents. But I refused to give up. I provided every single piece of evidence I could: text messages, screenshots of Madison's social media posts, and a detailed breakdown of the fraudulent charges versus my normal spending habits. Eventually, they ruled in my favor and reversed every single charge. Seeing that zero balance felt like an enormous weight had lifted. Since then, I've changed all my passwords, opened a new credit card with a different bank, and locked my credit to make sure this never happens again. As for my family, they're dealing with the repercussions of their actions. The fraud investigation is ongoing, and I have no plans to intervene. They made their choices, and now they're going to have to live with the consequences. To everyone who followed what happened, thank you. Your support has been everything to me. If you're navigating a similar situation, something that's challenging your inner peace, please remember you don't have to sacrifice your well-being for anyone else's sake, not even for family expectations. I've made a conscious decision to prioritize myself right now. It's not always easy, and there are days when the guilt tries to creep in, but I remind myself that I deserve to feel grounded and safe. For the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely putting my needs first, and honestly, life has never felt clearer. The fog that had been clouding my judgment and emotions is slowly lifting, and I can see a path forward, a path that's uniquely mine. I'm excited and a little scared, but more than anything, I feel empowered. This journey of self-discovery and self-care is the most important thing I can do right now, not just for myself, but also for those around me. A healthier, happier me is a better me for everyone.